it first starts with a paradigm shift. It has to start with that, because if you don't start with the paradigm shift, then you're stuck.
Yeah.
Because the paradigm shift empowers you now to see your here and now differently. And those other areas where you have greener spaces, it's because the community have taken ownership.
In every city, there's a quiet question shaping the future. Who are our spaces really designed for? For many children growing up in urban environments, the answer isn't always encouraging. Streets are busy, safe play areas are limited. And for too many families, the journey to school or even to a nearby green space comes with risk. At Breadline Africa, we've seen firsthand how infrastructure shapes opportunity. A safe classroom, a proper toilet, a space to play. These aren't luxuries. They are the foundation of dignity, learning, and long-term well-being. But what if we went further? What if entire neighborhoods were designed with children at the center? According to recent reporting from Cape Town today, the city is already supporting over 2,600 early childhood development centers, reaching nearly 100,000 young children across communities. Yet the challenge remains significant. Nearly 60% of these centers are still unregistered, often due to complex regulations, high cost, and administrative barriers. That means thousands of children are learning in spaces that may not yet have access to the full support, funding, and safety standards they deserve. But the response is evolving. Through initiatives like the city's ECD in Durban and targeted investment, Cape Town is working to simplify registration, increase funding, and building stronger partnerships between government, communities, and educators, all with the goal of creating a more inclusive and supportive early learning ecosystem. I'm Kelly Morkel, your host for this episode. I'm an impact strategist specializing in stakeholder engagement, culture development, and driving meaningful social change. With experience across the private sector, government, NPOs, and social enterprises, I bring a well-rounded perspective to helping individuals and organizations unlocking their heart's impact. Joining me today is the Deputy Mayor of Cape Town, Mr. Eddie Andrews. The Deputy Mayor holds responsibility for spatial planning and environmental portfolios, playing a key role in shaping how the city grows, develops, and serves its community. His work sits at the intersection of policy, infrastructure, and long-term urban strategy, making him uniquely positioned to speak to how cities can better support children and families. Today on Our Voice, Our Future, we explore how urban planning can become a powerful tool for early childhood development, from ECD centers and schools to safe walking routes, green spaces, and communities that truly nurture young lives. Hi, Deputy Mayor Eddie. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know for those who are listening, we had quite the conversation now, and I'm sure we're going to unpack into it. But we are just going to jump straight into it. So, Eddie, when we talk about child-friendly cities, what does that vision look like for Cape Town?
It's a very important question. I think it has to be safe. It has to be safe, and we need to ensure that every single child has access to an environment where they can be safe. And we as government, we have an obligation to ensure the environment is not just enabled, but we also have some skin in the game. What does a safe community look like? And I think the biggest risk for us would be to understand what does that context look like and how do we respond to that particular context. So to summarize, it has to be safe because a child must play, a child must enjoy, and they mustn't be too bothered about safety aspects that eventually they will become concerned about later in their life. But for now, just a safe environment.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that word safe, I think it's so important. And I think we all have different definitions, whether we're in government or private or, even community. So if we have to give that definition of safe in our environments and in our cities, particularly looking at, the ECD Foundation, what would you say the definition of safe is?
I think a building that is structurally sound, that is safe for them to be educated in because they spend most of their time on that property, educated there and about at least 7 years of their life. Very important foundational block that they have to be educated in. So a building that is safely built, that is structurally sound, that is the plumbing, the electrical work is safe, that there's no one will be electrocuted. And I think the public open spaces, that it's safe for them to play there, that personal safety there then also is not an issue. So that I would define as a safe environment. And I think most importantly, the educator as well, that they also part of that sort of that the safety aspect, that how they treat the child, how they care for the child, that it's a safe environment to do so, and navigating the child with that sort of safety in mind, that it's not the household that the child comes from. That you don't lose sight of that, especially Monday morning when it's weekend news and you get all the juicy stories.
Yeah.
That is a safe space for the child to share
Yes.
that you don't expose them to something that they shouldn't be exposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so good. And I'm like, what I'm hearing, it's like, it's holistic, right? So safety is holistic. It's physically, it's mentally, it's emotionally, all of those things. And so and you mentioned it, obviously, the infrastructure being one of the core spaces. When we look at our communities, because it's not just government that's involved in terms of safety. When we speak about collaboration, and we spoke about it earlier on, who does what in our communities, who's responsible for the safety of of our communities and of our ECDs and holistically in that sense. And how would you navigate that?
Kelly, all of us.
Mm.
All of us, because enforcement comes at the back end of a process or a decision that was made, and it was the wrong decision, and there's a consequence now. So we don't want that. We need to also understand how do we then, as affected stakeholders, also able to pivot to be a responsible stakeholder. What does that mean? It means that as a mother, as a father, as an uncle, aunt, as a gogo, that you are able to contribute towards a solution as well. What does that mean? It means that if you see something, say something. Become part of the neighborhood watch structures. Report these incidents to the enforcement agencies, and don't normalize it. I think that to me is important. So all of us have a role to play, not just government. And I mean, we can sit here and we can talk about how the system has failed us in terms of the justice system. But I think that's a conversation for another day. But rather to leave you understand that we all have a contribution, regardless of the context, and this should not be normalized.
Yeah, that's so good. And I'm like, with all of that not being normalized, I'm sure you're aware of the ESGs, the environmental, sustainable, and governance. It's coming in, and Europe is taking over, and slowly it's coming here. In terms of our infrastructure, and at Breadline, they're looking at alternative building. And also looking at more green areas, because play is such an important part, for the child. So if you had to dream, money isn't an object, and obviously with your background in spatial planning and environment, what would a ideal community look like with the center being the children?
I think I mentioned early on that it's not a one size fits all. Context specific approach is required. But I think also if you look at a child and what the environment should look like, not just my current portfolio in terms of spatial planning environment, but my wife and I owned a center in 2007.
Oh, wow.
So I know the struggles.
Yes.
But then also parts of the city, especially in informal settlements, the struggle that they face would be that they currently don't have a lease agreement or there are no services there, so they can't get building approvals. So that context also matters as well. And I think a space for me, if I can wave my magic wand, is that every single center, all 1,600 approximately of them that are not compliant, that they eventually are compliant. And that's important. It's important because they are then able to access the subsidies that government offers them. And yes, it's a small amount, but it's a very important contribution, especially in those contexts where parents struggle to pay.
Yeah.
Where parents struggle to pay. So not just government, but they can also then go knock on the door on corporate Africa and saying, as part of your ESGs, what can you do? I'm saying to you, I am administratively compliant.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I know what direction we're heading towards, and you can partner with us. You can contribute to it. You can be co-funding this sort of shared responsibility that we have.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. And I mean, just to pick your brain a little bit, is that CSI that we speak about that can come through private. We have, Breadline Africa that is busy with infrastructure in that regard. So what can be done in terms of collaborating and bringing all of those, like, again, dreaming, there's no silos, bringing everybody together. Like, how does that look like? And also, who's advocating for that?
I think we need to improve coordination. We need to improve coordination, and who should be leading the conversation should be government, and all three spheres, as a matter of fact, because local government is responsible for the compliance aspects as the regulator in terms of fire safety, environmental health, planning, and land use applications. And of course, provincial governments also have skin in the game in terms of what they need to do. They process all the information, they would issue the certificates of compliance, and of course, the national government in terms of the subsidies that they are offering now, particularly now that it's moved from social development to education.
Yes.
And that transition, we're still transitioning.
Yes.
It's not done yet.
Yeah.
And there are thousands of operators that are not mainstreamed yet.
Yeah.
They don't comply yet. And for me, that is important. Government should lead. And then, of course, just improve coordination, because the problem is that you're asking entities to register on a database, but they volunteer the information. So we're always missing people. Yeah. I mean, whenever we have these service delivery Mbizos across the city, I make a point to focus on two aspects, ECD and housing, because those are two very important programs that I'm responsible for, not broadly housing in the city, but affordable housing, and what my department is doing. And I ask them the question, the ECDs now, are you part of an ECD forum in your substructure?
That's good. Yeah.
And the answer is no. And the ones that say yes, I'm like, are you aware of this, what we are offering? The answer is no. Now, I leave there asking myself, how is information disseminated to those individuals? Yeah. And so that's why my kids, reminded me many moons ago the importance of social media. And so I use social media to communicate to people and say, guys, just see what we're doing. We've got so much to offer. And every day I post about the ECD reform that we've announced, and we'll get it in a moment. People still ask me questions. I'm like, why don't they know?
Yeah.
And I don't accept that when the city of Cape Town, we issue a corporate media release, it reaches the masses. It does not. Yeah. So I'm always keen to seek out opportunities. How do I reach those communities, especially in the ECD space, saying, hey, this is what we've done. This is how you are benefiting. This is how you can access resources to ensure that you're well on your way to becoming compliant.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree so fully with the forums. The forums is a hub for knowledge. I know previously when I worked for the city, we used it to the extent of information and even compliance, because there is, like you said, that lack of communication or that discord, broken telephone in a sense. And you're speaking about the ECD reform. So, I mean, with that, what policies and regulations do you think needs to shift? And I'm assuming that the ECD reform is talking about that, but just tell us a bit about that.
So we have one zoning scheme. So many moons ago, just over a decade ago, we had about 27 zoning schemes just before the Unicity. So we now have one zoning scheme, and I'm sure that the urban planners will necessarily agree with me, but I'm saying that it can't be a one size fits all.
Yeah, so true.
Some parts of the city, a requirement is that you need X amount of parking bays. But if you go in the Cape Flats, in the townships, there's not enough space on the property to accommodate a parking place
100%.
unless you elevate the building.
Yeah.
So that is context specific.
Yes.
And you have to ask yourself the question, how do we respond to that context? And so what we've done is now basically we've seen that there are, in certain parts of the city, there are centers that are operating that are not compliant. And they don't have the resources to be fully compliant. And one big, massive barrier was if you have a small school ECD, this of course is 34 children and less, you need to submit a land use application, which takes about anything from 12 to 18 months. If your neighbors all consent, then it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And if not, you just prolong a conversation. So what we've done is now we've not changed the bylaw. We said if your neighbors support your application and they put that in writing, you don't need to submit a land use application.
Wow.
So that's for 34 and less. So that provision now exists in the bylaw. It is a game changer.
It's a huge game changer.
It's a huge game changer because now you don't have to submit a land use application. Second thing, what we've done is if you are now wanting to extend or build a center, we have established a fund because when you build and you get a plan approval, we ask you to pay connectivity charges for water, sewer, and the like. That's called a development charge. We've established a fund. So you can actually make an application. Wow. And people are still not aware of the fund and not sure how to access the fund. So we're having these roadshows. I'm saying there's that support for you as well. We've now established a local planning support office. We were saying, and this is now in the ECD space, but also in the affordable rental unit space for housing. We were saying every single Thursday in your planning district closest to you, there's a hot body there, there's a desk there. They'll say, go and talk to them so they can give you planning advice. We've seen in this space that the operators have been misled, extorted by professionals because they think that they trust them. Like you go to the doctor, you trust an architect or a planner.
Yeah.
And one particular matter that I'm dealing with now at school was my own department served notice to close down the school. And it was a big thing in the media. And I was then asked to comment and I looked at him like, but how did you get here? And we eventually discovered that a professional person misled her. Wrong application, was not aware of the amendments to the bylaw, and now she's got to start all over again. So we're helping her now. But the point is that the reform is there, and that is why council structures, we have the decision that was made by council. We then go to those substructures in terms of the ECD fora. We inform them. We expect and assume that all of the operators are also members there, and they are not.
Sure.
And we then walk away thinking, well done, pat on the back, we've reached the masses. But we've not. And so the reform is there. And what we are saying, you don't need to suffer in silence.
Yeah.
As a city of Cape Town, we don't want to close you down.
Yeah.
We want to hold your hand. We want to ensure that we walk this pathway to compliance together and that you are aware what support is there for you. One Educare, I remember out in Grassy Park, Lego Educare, the lady approached me at an event where I spoke about the reform and she rushed me and then she was crying. I'm like, oh, what did I do now? And tears turning down the cheeks. I'm like, oh, can I help you?
Yeah.
She says, and she just gathered herself and she says, I just want to say thank you. I'm like, okay, but for what? And she shared with me that she extended her premise because she was growing and she got a bill of 182,000 Rand. She said, I don't have this money. Yeah. I was then informed of the fund that you've established and I made an application and I was successful.
Come on. Sure.
And that to me, that moment I cherish because it's, we are reaching, and it's one person and she's operating. And the intended outcome that we want to achieve is that when we talk about grade 12 results, we're locating intervention here in the foundational phase. As a consequence, in years to come, the grade 12 results will also improve because literacy levels are improved, maths literacy levels are improved, and we can go on and on and on. That is why this conversation is so important. And the mainstreaming of those educators in this space, especially those that are not compliant, is equally important because they're now part of the educational system.
I'm getting goosebumps here because I know the struggle of the 34 and under. And for especially, and I'm going to say this, the ECDs in the Cape Flats area,
Yes.
and also those in informal areas, it's very difficult to get zoning, and that's the minimal requirement in order. If you don't have that, you'll never be registered and you'll never be compliant. And so I think it's so important just by you sharing this. I mean, it's on a platform and hopefully the dozens and the the masses will be reached through that. And so, I mean, just speaking to the masses, because like you said, it's a collaboration, it's an approach, everybody. So we have government, we have NPOs, private sectors, but we also have the community. So we're also speaking about safe spaces, and we also want to speak about greener spaces. And I'll go again, the Cape Flats is not a green area versus some of the more affluent areas where green is. And we know that green environments, it cultivates nature just cultivates a relaxation, easy to learn in that sense. So if you have to think about like an innovative approach that we can actually speak to the masses out there, that it starts with them. And obviously, like you said, get the buy-in and apply for the funding and things. But how can our communities be innovative to create a green space with what they have in the community?
Sure. So they can. I think it first starts with a paradigm shift. It has to start with that, because if you don't start with a paradigm shift, then you're stuck.
Yeah.
Because the paradigm shift empowers you now to see your here and now differently. In that what it's now doesn't have to be, and it can be changed. And those other areas where you have greener spaces, it's because the community have taken ownership. They've established a Friends of the Park. So you can look back in the townships and the Cape and say, oh, it's not for my community. And if I remember many moons ago, I stood on Rhodes Drive, and we were busy with the municipal spatial framework, and we're looking at the city from that perspective. And one of the guys said, just look, all the trees stop at the M5. And you cross over, then it's Athlone, there are no trees there.
Yes.
And the further you go, then there are no trees there. But it can start with a paradigm shift for you taking ownership of your space. And if you don't do that, then you'll always blame circumstance. You always blame, oh, my community will never be like that community. And I think from the city side, we will always partner with any individual community structure that wants to partner with us ensuring the spaces are green. Because what do those spaces now actually look like? Dumping hotspots.
Yes.
Where do the waste come from? From the community. So we pay someone to dispose of the waste irresponsibly because we don't have a second bin, because the backer dweller at the back does not want to pay the 183 Rand for the bin. And so we just dump the waste. And the cumulative impact on the city is about 350 million Rand, where we remove waste that's been disposed of irresponsibly. And I share that to remind us again about the paradigm shift, because we need the spaces for the kids to be educated in. I spent 44 years of my life. Oh, let me do the math quickly. I think it's 42 years of my life. No, it's 44 years of my life growing up in Mitchells Plain. And just before COVID started, we made the move to close to the kids' schooling, and we now moved to the southern suburbs. And I shared with a friend of mine, for the past 5 years, I wake up, I hear, of course, the alarm in the southern suburbs, the Hadida, makes lots of noise.
Yeah.
But I think also equally, I see trees in my garden. I see that. I drive on the M3 highway, beautiful, luscious trees and the branches and the grass, people walking. I start the day with a different paradigm now. Yeah. And you can also create those spaces within the townships. There's one example I'll share with you. A couple of weeks ago in Dunoon, it's dense in Dunoon.
Quite dense, yeah.
Quite dense.
Yeah.
And there was, next to the community hall, there was this public open space. It was a dumping hotspot. So we cleaned it and we removed the waste and we planted grass there. And we put play equipment there. And months later we went there. It's still like that. It's still clean. It's the only green infrastructure that's not a dumping hotspot. And so now we're trying to understand why. How did this happen? Ownership.
Yes. Yeah, community ownership.
Ownership. So that's the innovation required, that we need to have a paradigm shift and saying, regardless of the area I'm born into, I can actually have that green space right here. And there are doors that you can knock on that will assist you, because if you pursue success, success will pursue you without a doubt.
Yeah. While you were speaking, I was just reminded of Nantaspark.
That's a beautiful example.
Nantaspark is such a beautiful example. It's Bridgetown, Q-Town, it's in the heart. And it's such a beautiful space that's underutilized.
Yeah.
Went there on a Saturday, and they had the early run, the park runs,
Yes.
and 90% of the people going to the park runs is not from the area. And so that paradigm shift is so important in terms of ownership, in terms of it. And they have a Friends of Nanta. So it's you're so right that ownership comes in when it's the community that's taking the ownership in that regard. And with that, how do we bring the parents along in that conversation, the parents and the community? Because we're saying they need to, but how do we bring them along in that conversation?
I think the parents need to understand that the ECD, the operators, they are not babysitters. It is a partnership. Your child spends a lot more time there than they do at home, because we also acknowledge that you as a parent, as a guardian, by the time that you arrive home in the evening, it's late. The child may be sleeping, or there's no time to have family time or do some homework. That it's a partnership. And you have to reinforce whatever's happening at the educare. I'll never forget this, God bless her soul, Nisha, the educare that my wife and I had. She was the toddler's teacher, and she had about 7 or 8 kids, all under the age of 1. And at 12:30 every single day, they all slept. And I'm like, how on earth is this possible? We're struggling with one at home, but how is this possible? And I said, I need to understand what she's doing. How do I take those principles home when I fetch child, and then sort of assist her to do what we need to do as a duo, as a partnership?
Yes.
I think that to me is important.
Yeah.
It's not a sort of a daycare facility or a drop-off facility.
Yes.
These are your partners.
Yeah.
And recognize that the foundational phase is so important in individual's holistic development.
Yeah. No, it's so good. So, I mean, at the heart of this podcast is the idea of voice. So, how many communities and even children themselves been included in shaping the spaces they use? So, how can we use? I mean, it's a similar question, but like shaping those spaces. If we had to get the children involved, like how would that look like? In terms of, because they are using the spaces, is there space in policy and forums for including the children in that regard?
No, I don't think there is, and I think it goes back to the public participatory processes. If we have a park upgrade, what equipment? And sadly, there's no policy that guides us other than age-appropriate equipment, which is, I suppose, a policy position. But sometimes you need to also understand the context. And I'll share an example. I mentioned I was a ward councillor in Mitchells Plain, and the Westridge Gardens was part of my ward. And a lady approached me and she said to me, I have a special needs child. He's differently abled. He's in the wheelchair. And you don't have any play equipment that would assist him. I'm like, what do you mean? She says, no, but there's a roundabout and there's swings. I'm like, I've never seen this. So I listened and I went to the parks department, and they said, yeah, we actually have a catalog that will speak to this. And we eventually put in the budget, and today the equipment is still next to the swimming baths, the tennis courts out in Westridge. And I share that with you because it was a conversation that we had. And I think the educators or the parents must then represent the child at the forum where we engage. Otherwise, we won't necessarily know. Other than is it age appropriate, but maybe there could be other more educational equipment we can consider. If you look at autism schools and those sensory rooms and stuff, what they do and how they understand. And so I think that is important. And we do have that. We also have a sort of a department that is responsible for early child development in the city, And they also have educational resources, but that's of course within. We're talking about public spaces. But I think we need the sector to represent the kids in those discussions and elevate it. And I've seen there's one ECD that I think it just comes to mind now out in Mitchell's Plain. Three Bears Educare, Mrs. Sickle and the Sickle family. And what I love about their center and the space that they've created, they have all these amazing signage on the floor in the play areas. They have the fire plan when they need to escape. There's a song that they've written.
Wow.
And they've got it on
I love
CD.
that.
And then the kids would come out and do that. So, and they've got an amazing space, a learning environment. Will that work in a general public open space? To a certain extent, it could. But again, it comes back to ownership. Because if you do that, hopefully no one will vandalize it or do graffiti or whatever the case may be. But it starts with ownership and just representing the kids in those fora.
Yeah, that's so true. I really resonate with the special needs. I mean, I have a godson that has special needs, and the facilities that are out there, it's very limited because it's kind of second nature, or the last thought or afterthought in that regard. So really the caregivers and the educators, speaking up in that sense. But sensory rooms, it's so true. And I want to say this, incorporating OTs. I think that would be amazing because they are also about developmental and what would be great, play areas and things like that.
Affordability.
Yeah, but maybe, so I say when we start the project, we speak about stakeholder engagement and then we get everybody involved in things. But when we speak about play, playground, who are the stakeholders? The kids are, and so we overlook that. And I think it's also, like you say, that paradigm shift in terms of if we're speaking about project specific, we need to be honest about who the stakeholders are in that sense. And I just thought about it now, just thinking about it, because I do a lot of stakeholder engagements. But I mean, if a project is for a child, why aren't we involving them in the process? In that regard. Last two questions. I mean, it's been amazing. I think I can just pick your brain on so many things. But if we look ahead 10 to 15 years, what would success look like for children in urban planning in Cape Town?
We spoke about it earlier on where we, looked at the reform that we've now looked at in our municipal planning bylaw.
Yeah.
And having an approved plan. In the informal settlements, you don't necessarily have access to services where the operator was responding to a need, but there are no services. And to answer your question, it is closely linked to how many of those centers are fully compliant. I've mentioned it there because this is what we're looking at now as a city and the ECD task team, and with the program that we're about to launch end of May, early June, where we are saying, what is our success metric here? And it would be that the just over 1,600 operators are compliant, but there are so many of them in informal settlements. And just last year, we have the first building plan approval for a center in an informal settlement where there are no services.
Wow.
The first one, so there's no water, there's no electricity, nothing, and it's approved. Of course, there's some conditions they have to comply with now, but just to get that across the line was such an important milestone for us, and now we're going to scale that. So for me, it is that we have these centers in close proximity where the kids are, and that they are fully compliant, but they are managed sustainably. That's so good. Because sometimes, and some of these centers, especially in the townships, parents are not paying. And so it starts out with a gogo or the auntie looking after 2 children.
Yep.
Then it was, before the reform, you were limited to 6 children, one need a land use application. Now it's up to 34. So you start in the street, and it's no, go to that auntie. You're going to put them there, and then it becomes, then you, now it grows, and now you need to submit an application, right? And now the auntie is not a qualified educator, but it works in that context.
Yeah.
And so for me to conclude with the response would be that those individuals that we need to capacitate So the operator, how do we capacitate them as an educator and
Yes.
as an operator, and how that structure is compliant according to code, so you can get your approvals in place, and how do we create those safe spaces for children to play in and understand that you won't necessarily have sufficient, because as a health practitioner, you know, they measure the space and they say, well,
Yep.
based on the
You
space,
can only have
you
so
only
many.
so many children. And but now at least we can look at, if there's a public open space in close proximity, you can include that in
That's
your
so
application.
good.
So
Yes.
because I mentioned some of these areas, the properties are too small.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, that's Kelly, that would be my response, that we have all of them a lot more compliant, that they have the necessary business acumen to manage themselves sustainably, because you have to do well before you do good.
Yeah, that's so good. So it's infrastructure, it's capacity building, and including the surrounding spaces.
Sustainable communities.
Sustainable communities. I like that. Sustainable communities. So with that, what is the one decision that we need to get right today for that to take place?
So we're on our way there. And I think let's go back to the ECD forum. We need all of the operators to be part of the forum, so you know what assistance is there. That's important. So we're on our way there. If you were to ask me the question, and maybe go back to the future, we're also now exploring large-scale ECDs, so 34 and more, that are located within the areas that are approved by council as per the map. So these are areas that are socially vulnerable. And so it can't be a one size fits all. So if you have a large scale ECD out in Mitchells Bay, Nuka-Richa, and you have a large scale ECD out in Camps Bay, it's not a one size fits all. Yeah. You have a different zoning scheme here because of your land use, the property size, the context there, where in Camps Bay or Bishop's Court, wherever I'm not sure they have ECDs in Bishop's Court. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe they are. I was actually check. But the point being that we respond to that context, and that they have the kids, the large scale ECDs also benefit from the same provision. Yes. Because we will have great impact, because that's where the numbers are. Yeah. So the small scale 34 nests, we've helped them now. They must still be informed that this is the assistance, but going forward, it's the large-scale ECDs within the socially vulnerable areas that we need to target now going forward.
Yeah. While you're speaking, I'm not too sure if you've ever seen that picture with the boy and the dad, and then there's the boxes, and it speaks about equality and equity. And
I included in my presentation.
And
just remove the fence. Is it the baseball game?
Yes. And I mean, that's exactly what needs to be done in order for that sustainable community, sustainable. And it's also for me, it's seeing the ECD as both an education, but also as a business. And I think that's important. And then business goes into innovation. And so now anything is possible. And then obviously tying that again into the importance of play and safe spaces that we spoke about, right in the beginning. Eddie, I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you. And I'm sure the listeners is going to take a whole lot of notes and, go research and things and share that, because you've given such wealth of information. And I think for me, it's communication is key. In order for us to create those spaces and compliance, and I think that's exactly what Breadline is doing. That's what we're doing. We are wanting to assist in terms of the compliance, because without the infrastructure, in the play areas, you can't. So if there's any final words you'd like to share with the listeners, you are more than welcome to.
Thank you. I think, again, to go back to information, I mean, I have, and we'll send the details to you as well. We have a WhatsApp channel. So they can just subscribe to the channel. We all the social media platforms. We're on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm an embarrassment to my children because I'm on TikTok now. But people are there, so you must share the information as well. But I think the thought that I want to leave is that the shared future requires shared responsibility. And regardless of and I go back to the earlier point, regardless of the area that you're born into, Shift the paradigm. See the community here and now with the eye of tomorrow, because that will give you strength, encourage, inspiration for tomorrow. Otherwise, you will just be stuck there. And one of the quotes that I share often, I have many other quotes, but this is my one that I love a lot, is by Henry Hartman that says, success is when preparation meets opportunity. And as an operator, that's the message to you. You know, that life is a journey of preparation, and you have to be ready when that opportunity comes, and then you will be successful. And as we know, it's not a destination. In some parts of the city, in the Cape Flats and the townships, it's a decision that you have to make every single day. And the final point, don't let the environment live inside of you.
Thank you so much, Eddie. If we want to change outcomes for children, we must change the environments they grow up in. Because when a child has access to a safe classroom, a green space to explore, and a community that supports their journey, that's not just good policy. That's transformation. At Breadline Africa, we believe that every child deserves a safe place to learn, play, and dream, because those spaces shape everything that comes next. So here's your call to action. Engage with your local community and planning processes. Advocate for child-friendly spaces in your area. Support organizations building infrastructure for early learning. Because our cities are more than places we live. They are the environments that shape who we become. This has been Our Voice, Our Future. And until next time, let's keep building a future that starts with our children.